I'm Katie McDonald and this is SEO in 2024.
Katie, what's your number one SEO tip for 2024?
I think we should be thinking better and rushing less.
Thinking better and rushing less. Okay, does that mean that in relation to AI, we are thinking and acting and doing things as humans all the time? Or can we still automate things and get things done more efficiently using AI tools without being too concerned about it?
Yeah, so we can be using AI in the right ways. I think people can use AI and get carried away with it and think it can do absolutely everything. And I would probably disagree a little bit there. So I think we can be using AI to automate and do things faster once we've done the bulk of the research. But I think AI is still not a human. Humans can still do things that AI can't. It can spit out ideas and you can give it prompts and you can give it your ideas and ask it and brief it on a client's project or things like that and give them the tone of voice. You can really play around with AI and give it the brief and the background that you want to give it to then see what it spits out and work with that. But without that information first, we wouldn't be able to get a kind of a good enough response. So we need to do the research first, and that's where the experienced SEO comes in, to get to know the business, to get to know the client's, the customer's persona, all of that kind of stuff, because AI is not going to know that. You're not going to be able to produce an entire SEO strategy and actually implement that and get results just using AI or a chat GPT tool. It's not possible. You need the experience of a professional SEO who's got bags of years of experience under their belt to see what works, what doesn't, has got the technical SEO knowledge, the content knowledge, and is kind of well-rounded, let's say. They understand how things work from kind of the base up, because there's a lot of SEO experts out there that claim to be SEO experts because they've done a course, they've done one course somewhere and then put that on a LinkedIn. But I think actually having the experience of working with clients day in, day out, or working client side day in, day out, working on SEO, doing the research, seeing how things work, getting hands-on, AI can't do that for you. AI can automate the tasks when you've done the research. So once you've done that research and you've figured out, right, this is how we're going to tackle this sector for the company or the client you're working with. And then once you've done that, you can go, right, okay, well, this is how we're going to get to there. Where can we fit AI in to basically accelerate those results? So then definitely 110%, and I've definitely been using AI to kind of accelerate the tasks that I need to do off the back of the research. So I'm not cheating or anything. None of the SEOs are cheating when they do that, if it's done in the right way and it's briefed correctly. So then, once you know what schema you need to create, once you know all your H tags, your metadata, there's loads of technical tasks, so much schema you can kind of click of a button once you've briefed it incorrectly. And then, you're not spending 2 days or however long it is spending all that time writing metadata and all the manual tasks in SEO that still need to be done, but you're automating that part. You've done all the wonderful research and you feel really grounded and you're confident in your strategy because you've spent that thinking time, because you're not rushed to get to the 2 days worth of H tags. You can then spend that 2 days attacking schema, attacking meta tags, attacking image tags, attacking all the things you need to attack faster because you've done the research. So that's kind of what I mean by think better, rush less.
So that's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you've given us a flavour of many different SEO tasks that you can use AI for. But what does your think better process actually look like before you get started with doing your tasks? Do you spend a certain period of time, for instance, once a month or at the beginning of the year, just to try and plan out precisely what you're going to do and how much AI you're going to use and how much human input you're going to have? Or is that not really possible using AI? Do you have to be a little bit reactive in terms of what you do and what you try and break down and get the bots to do on your behalf?
So I think with the thinking better, I don't use too much AI to do the thinking for me. So when I say think better, for me, the thinking behind the SEO strategy really comes before any SEO. So let's say, for example, we onboard a new client at KWeb. We then need to talk to that client. All the thinking is a big umbrella term that then includes lots of things, basically. So I would be talking to the client, I'd be understanding how their business works, what the product is or the service, getting a real good understanding of it, almost as good as their understanding, figuring out who their customer is, what are their pain points, what are they looking for. And then obviously we're going to think about how we're going to tackle that on the website. What does the website need to look like? Doing all of that, that's all the thinking. And then once I've obviously gone away and done the competitor research, see who else is out there ranking for the terms that we should be ranking for, I can then work out, well, what pages do we need to have on the website? I can work out, do we need a blog to support those pages? Is it more of a backlink process? How fast is the website? All of the things that encompass SEO, I can work out and prioritise. Actually, even, for example, something I haven't mentioned yet is there a problem with the indexation of the website? So has Google Analytics decided and Search Console decided that actually there's serious problems with the website, and actually it really suffered from a Google algorithm update, which who hasn't? But there's so many things to keep into that thinking process, thinking or planning or strategizing almost. So that's a huge process that I know some agencies don't do, but for me, that big process right at the start that can take hours, it can take days sometimes, depending on the size of the thing, the size of the problems you find. If you're doing a content strategy with all these wonderful keywords, all this great search volume that the client's really impressed with, but then 6 months down the line, you realise you've got a serious indexation problem where half your site's, blocked by robots, well, you're wasting your time then. So all that strategizing at the start, however long that time that take, however much time that takes, that will then help me prioritize. Then I'll work out, okay, we need to fix the indexing first, make sure there's a technical, solid foundation of the website. We're not doing things and wasting time. And then we can work through what's going to get the results the fastest. And then it's the case of, okay, and this might be a 12-month plan. It might be longer, depending on budget, depending on lots of things. I wouldn't look at a blog content and auditing all the lots and lots and lots of blogs if actually we need to get the service pages sorted first, because that's going to be your lead drivers, etc. So we have this massive strategy at the start that takes however long it takes. And then we get a plan and we say, right, okay, for the next 3, 6, 12 months, depending on what budget is, sometimes it's even longer. We can then go, right, okay, well, what can we automate? And if we can automate it, when can we get it done by? And then it's a case of, okay, what can we brief into AI and what needs a little bit more time? And then it gets planned out into that time frame, basically. I would normally wouldn't work on a month-by-month basis, sort of, oh, right, what should we do this month? Because that's not a strategy, then that's just trying to do stuff each month for SEO and hoping.
So a lot of great advice there. It's certainly absolutely key to decide yourself what gets done and not rely on the AI to decide on your behalf. And you did mention a couple of things there that you do get AI to do. So I think it would be nice just to get a flavour of 2 or 3 tasks that you tend to use AI for. You did mention ChatGPT as well. So do you use ChatGPT? Is there a particular version of it you use? Are there any plugins that you use? And what are particular SEO tasks that you do ask AI to help you with?
So I ask AI to help me with lots of the stuff that needs writing that's scalable. So, for example, if I'm working on several articles for a client a month as part of a strategy, a client we work with who's in the broadband industry, and they do really, really well for a lot of their blog articles, often ranking really well. And I found that actually using ChatGPT, once I've briefed it in to say, look, this is the kind of article we want to write, this is the competitors who are already ranking, but then brief it in talking about, okay, make sure the tone of voice is this, we want to add these internal links, mention these sources, don't mention X, Y, Z in case there's anything that client wouldn't feel comfortable talking about as a brand. That's just sort of off the top of my head, lots of other things I'd brief in ChatGPT. And like you say, there'd be lots of other plugins I've used. Some are hit and miss. I can't give examples that are the miss ones because I don't use them very often.
What are the hit ones?
The hit ones are, I think it's SEO Writer or something like that. There's definitely the blue one, the pink one, and there's another one in the I can remember the colours, that's the only thing. in the ChatGPT, the 4.0 version, I don't tend to use the 3.5 because it just tends to be that little bit more accurate. And I'm not going to be creating content that's not accurate. So I tend to use ChatGPT for a base of content for an article. I wouldn't then just copy and paste it because that's just going to be duplicate then, because it's obviously using it from the internet basically. So then once I've got that content, I can then proof it myself, knowing what the client, knowing who the client is, and obviously is it in line with the brief I've just given it, and then tweaking it, adding extra things like if the client's produced a new interactive calculator or a tool or a new research paper or things like that that's going to add even more value to that article, then I'll add that. But the base of the content is then there for me to then add schema, add internal links, and really SEO it up really. So that's where the client's going to get the real value from. So that's tend to how I use ChatGPT. But I also use it for schema. So there's things like FAQ schema, sort of any other schema really, web page schema, I've already mentioned FAQs, any other like how to, for example. I'll then ask ChatGPT and say, look, this is the article we're working on. This is the part of the text that I want you to focus on for the schema. Can you please write this schema? And tends to, churn out some good stuff. Sometimes, like I said, there are issues with it. So that's kind of why you need the human touch, because without the human touch, it just wouldn't work. It would be inaccurate. You might have the wrong links. You might have stuff in the content that's completely not on brand. So it needs both parts of the elements to really work. But yeah, I think they definitely use AI and then ChatGPT as well.
And you mentioned schema a couple of times there, so it's certainly something you've obviously done a few times there and find a lot of value in. What's your preferred way of installing schema?
So a lot of our clients work with WordPress. So I will tend to literally go into one of the pages or a post, for example. We've seen huge success with actually getting lots of featured snippets from this schema where we've literally added in, we'll go into the page or the post, and at the top there's a little, there's a choice between choosing visual or text. And if you go into the text option and then scroll right to the bottom of the page, obviously make sure it's text and not visual, otherwise you're going to have a big chunk of code on the page. And then literally copy and paste in once we've validated it in the schema tool to make sure that it's actually correct and accurate and is going to be picked upable. We'll then pop it into there, preview it just to make sure it is actually all as it should look. And then, get sign off from the client and go live. And a lot of the time we have seen really good, like I say, feature snippets within days from uploading the content and then adding in extra bits of schema throughout the throughout the week. So for example, and then we seem to get really good results from that. So it's definitely worth using that process, but in the right way, not just asking ChatGPT to write an article and paste it in.
So should every sector, every industry be using that process, or is incorporating schema within an article or a blog post not appropriate for certain industries?
I mean, the ones I've done it for, which is quite a variety of sectors. I've done it in beauty industry, so cosmetic surgery, for example. I've done it on broadband, done it on lots of different sectors, just so you can see the variety. And as soon as you add in that schema, obviously it's, for people that don't know, it's a piece of code that essentially tells Google what that page is and gives it that context. And from what I've seen, is just fantastic results. We've added in the schema from the code that AI has given us, obviously proofing it and making sure that actually the links are all correct and there's no kind of technical problems with how the code's been set up. And then so I can't see any reason really why you wouldn't want to use it, because every single time so far, touch wood, it has worked really well, and we've seen articles go from 3rd, 4th, 5th position to 0 and get that feature snippet in it literally overnight. So I think it's a game changer.
Wow, that's significant. Yeah. So if an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2024?
I think if SEOs are needing an activity that is possibly a bit doing an activity that's ineffective, I think possibly stop trying to fill time with technical SEO tasks that are trivial.
What would be an example of a trivial technical SEO task?
Oh, okay. So I won't obviously name any names, but there's definitely SEOs I've known over the last 8, 9, 10 years now that will spend hours going through a list of meta titles that are too long, meta descriptions that are too short, making sure that the H1 matches the SERP title, things like that, or trying to improve the website speed by 2% just to get a CLS score. I think those can be really trivial things, and I think your efforts can be, in terms of getting actual results, seeing rankings go up and seeing that company or client actually make more money that month. I think that's probably a bottom of the list priority. And even then, I probably wouldn't even bother trying to do that. I would focus on, have a look at AI. What can you do in there from your strategy, from all the research that you've done? And if you've not done some research, I'd possibly question some things. And use that research then to plan out, right, what can AI do for me that I can then use and do it faster, but then obviously checking over and making sure that if your website that you're working on is, obviously, if it's literally too slow to function and you physically can't use it, then yeah, of course it needs speeding up a bit. But if you're trying to get it from a C to a B in such sort of GTmetrix or any other speed tool, then your efforts are probably better spent in AI, implementing schema across the site, or looking at your articles. And yeah, there's lots more stuff. I've seen so many crazy results from utilizing AI for using off the back of the strategy that you've done, rather than trying to change meta titles because a tool thinks they're too short or too long, when Google has overwritten them anyway. So that would be my number one top tip, that it'll change the game.
So I can certainly see it's changing the game for you. I guess the pushback would be that surely you're just training the AI, and within 6 months, then it won't need schema because it'll understand the context of things, and it will be able to mark up your content automatically by itself because it'll be smart enough to know what needs to be a featured snippet.
I mean, I think if AI is getting smarter because I've briefed it, and then we're getting feature snippets anyway, without me putting the schema, without me spending time in AI and putting schema in and getting the result, well then brilliant. I'll then go and use my time elsewhere. Well, I know the thing that I wanted to do is getting results.
But in the meantime, you'll take advantage of this, and it's definitely working just now.
Yeah, exactly. If it's proving to be successful at the moment, if AI can figure that out and do it for all the articles, great. I'll go and do my next priority job, knowing that AI is covering that.
Yeah, in the meantime, it's best to use your time. Superb. Okay, Katie McDonald is SEO specialist at KWeb, and you can find her over at kweb.co.uk. That's spelled aaweb.co.uk. Katie, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2024.
Thanks, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2024, the book, over at seoin2024.com.